Hi, and welcome to Recovered, Interviews with Alcoholics, a podcast from the Magdalen House, a recovery community for alcoholism. We're a 501c3 nonprofit in Dallas, Texas, lovingly known by many as Maggies. Every first and third Wednesday, we drop a new episode from one of our 3 podcast series. In Recovered, a recovered alcoholic from our community sits down and shares their story, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. I'm your host, Laura Wilson, a recovered alcoholic and the communications manager here at Maggie's. Whether you're in recovery, curious about sobriety, or here to support someone you care about, we're really glad you're tuning in. Thanks for being here. Hello, podcast listeners, and welcome to this week's episode of Recovered, Interviews with Alcoholics. We have Miss Magyn Whitaker in the chair today, so if you have been around the community, you probably have seen her around. She is co-chair of the Maggie's Women's Group, and I'm so happy to have you here today and hear your story.
Thank you for having me.
We're just going to get right into it. Tell me about your experience with alcohol and what led you to come to the Magdalen House.
All right. So I was born in Fort Worth, Texas. My parents divorced when I was 3 years old. I have an older brother who is not an alcoholic. And lived with my mother for the most part. She was a single mom, and we would always go and spend weekends with Dad. And Dad was the fun guy, it was always, let's go to Chuck E. Cheese or let's do all the fun things. And I just remember one of my earliest memories is there was always Miller Lite in his hand, and Daddy always had fun. And, I equated a beer in your hand to fun, and there was always people around. There was always family around, and it was always a party at Dad's house. And, and then, my mom was busy raising me and working, single mother. And I don't ever remember her with a drink in her hand. And so as a young child, I equated fun to beer. So I couldn't wait to get and be old enough to drink. And I guess I had my first real drink when I was 15 years old with some of my best friends who I'm still good friends with to this day. And I just remember how much fun I had. And even though I got sick, I couldn't wait the next morning. When you're 15, you recover pretty quick to do it again. So all through high school, I was a good student. I was a good kid. I tried to not make any waves. So I could go out with my friends on the weekends and we go to football games or baseball games and we party afterwards. But I will say that now that I've been in recovery, looking back, every time I drank, I got drunk. With friends, whenever I went off to college, I always got drunk. And now I understand why, but I didn't understand why at the time. And so in high school, I met my husband. We started dating when we were 16 years old, and we married young. We married at 19, and we moved around. We were a military family, and I'd meet like-minded individuals. I started having babies when I was 20. Had my third when I was 25. And so everywhere that we would move, I would always need mommy friends, and we would have mommy kid playtime. And there was always wine involved, always drinks involved. And I can't say that I didn't drink every day for a long time. It was mostly social. It was mostly on the weekends. It was mostly with some of my best friends, But most of the time, when we get babysitters for the kids, I would always drink to excess. I was never a designated driver. I would volunteer and then get 2 drinks in, and they'd be like, that's not going to work out. And so it was never like an issue where, my husband would say anything or I wouldn't get in trouble or anything like that. But, and I was busy doing the mom thing. I was, as the kids grew, as we moved, I would take the kids to their camps. I would take the kids to their practices, and I was a stay-at-home mom. And my husband was gone a lot. So for me, it was, 5 o'clock. I get all the mom stuff done, and we get home, and I'd start dinner. And you could probably ask my kids to this day, was there ever a time mom was cooking dinner where there wasn't a glass of wine on the counter? I can guarantee you that the answer would be no, because mom always had a glass of wine. And so it just kind of went that way for years. I did make some poor choices, but I got the job done. And drinking was my reward for getting the job done. All the kids were fed. The kids were well taken care of. They were well-rounded. They were involved in all the stuff. Husband was gone, and then he would be home, and then he would take over, and then mom would have a little bit more free time, But then we moved. When my youngest graduated from high school, we moved to the house we live in now. So my youngest graduated high school. We moved up to where we live now, and then he left for college. And Megan didn't know who Magyn was anymore. I had no one to take care of. I was lonely. I was bored. Didn't really have a lot of friends. But where we moved, you don't move out there to sober up. It's a lot of parties, and there were a lot of people there were a lot of bars you could, go from bar to bar to bar to bar. And so the drinking increased to, every day, sometimes all day, depending if I had stuff to do that day. And COVID kind of slowed it down because my husband's work situation changed and he was home every night. So I kind of had a babysitter, I guess you could say. But then once the world opened back up and his job his job came back up and he was gone a lot, I didn't have anybody to answer to. And whenever I could make the excuse to just stay home and isolate, as we do, I did. And so in 2022, I had some health issues. And the doctor had said to me, look, we know that you ended up in the hospital because of your drinking. And so I'm going to recommend that you moderate / try to stop. So that was the theme of 2022 was I'm going to do the things and I'm going to stop drinking or I'm going to moderate. That didn't go so well. And then 2023 rolled around and I got into a car accident. But miraculously, I didn't get into a car accident with anybody else. I didn't hurt myself. I didn't hurt anybody else. I didn't get arrested. But I knew at that point, at the urging of my husband and my mother and my daughter, that I needed to get some help. And it's funny because when I look back, I always knew my drinking was different. But I never Googled, are you an alcoholic? Because I knew that the answers on that screen, I'd probably check every box, and I wasn't ready for that because I could control it, right? Mm-hmm. I could manage this. I managed everything else. So I could manage this. But at that point, I knew I needed help. And so my husband was on a trip and I called my mother crying, obviously, because I knew as my grandmother used to say, my goose was cooked. Mm-hmm. And it was time to face reality. And so I called my mom and I said, hey, I need some help. And my mom lives 2 hours south of me. And she said, I'll be there in an hour. So my husband had already called her to let her know what had gone down. And so my mom shows up, and it also too, back to the car accident, it was all I did to my car was flatten the driver's side tire and the driver's side passenger and driver tire, front and back tire or whatever. And so the car looked completely fine. And my mom drove up and she was like, well, it doesn't look too bad. But, that was just the icing on the cake of everything else. And so my mom, what I didn't know until that day, My mother had started Al-Anon 4 years before I got sober.
Wow.
She, where she lives, she had watched my drinking increase. And I don't know if I should back up and preface this with, I lost my father in 2002 in an alcohol-related accident. And from that time on, I can't say that increased my drinking. My mother, I think at the time, was afraid that I was drinking because he had passed away. But I'd always been a drinker. That was like my thing, But whenever we moved to where we live now, she noticed my drinking changing. And so she went to Al-Anon, and one of the first things that she asked them at a meeting was, how can I fix my daughter?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, well, there's really nothing that you can do except pray and hope that she reaches out for help. So my mom had contacted, whenever I reached out to her and asked her for help, she reached out to her Al-Anon sponsor, who gave her 3 places in Dallas. And when I was told by my husband and my mother and my daughter that I had to go away, I was not very happy about it. But I knew I needed to do something because I was going to lose everything. There were no divorce papers on the table. There was, you do this or this is going to happen. That was never the way it went. They were like, you need to go somewhere else because we need to figure out what's going on and why you can't stop. So I looked at 2 places, and they weren't what I had in my mind that I wanted to attend. And I went to Google reviews, and the Google reviews weren't that great. So I sat on it. I got to sit on it for about a week. And then a week went by, and my husband said, well, there's one more place on this list that your mom gave you that you need to look into. And I thought, for that week, I'd been really good. I had really been pulling back and watching what I was drinking and all that. And so I kind of rolled my eyes because I was trying to get out of it. So I Googled. I didn't Google. I went online and went to the MagdalenHouse.org website. And the very first page of that website at the time was a picture of 5 beautiful women hugging each other and big smiles on their faces. And they were all so pretty and they all looked so happy. And I thought, well, this is interesting, So I went to the about and I read what it was about. And it was women only, alcohol only. And I thought, oh man, because that was my stipulation. I didn't want to be around men. At the time, I didn't have a drug problem. I just drank too much. Sometimes, right? That was what I would say to myself. Every so often on an empty stomach. And so I was like, well, okay, I'll go to Google reviews. And then, so that's just going to completely end this. And then we'll have to figure something else out. But every Google review was glowing. And Maggie's saved my life. And I'm so glad that I called. And I'm so glad I went there. And I thought, well, I know now that I do have to go somewhere. So I called the intake or the phone screen number and did the phone screen and got down to the very last question of, do you want to stop drinking? And I sat there for a second and I said, yes. And I said it real quiet. And the girl on the phone said, "What? I didn't hear what you said." And I said, well, yes. And she said, okay, well, when can you be here? And I thought, well, here we go, So that was on a Wednesday. And I got here on a Friday. And, my husband was so excited that I had committed and I was going to go somewhere to figure out what was going on with me, and not necessarily what was wrong with me, just why did I always drink the same way? How come he could drink 2 beers and be completely ready for bed, and you give me 2 glasses of wine and I'm tying it on until I'm out of booze or fall asleep. So I was curious, and him and I both were just kind of like, what are they gonna do to me? Yeah. What are they gonna do to me to make me not want to drink? Because it was fascinating to me that these women on this picture, who I now know and they are my friends, right? I don't know. It was fascinating. So anyway, I got to Maggie's like I said, on a Friday, and my first meeting was the 2:30 meeting. And whenever they gave me that bag, I opened the bag because they were in a meeting when I did my intake, and I couldn't go. I couldn't go into the meeting room, so they sent me up to my room to unpack and all that fun stuff. And I took everything out of the bag, and I saw this book that said Alcoholics Anonymous on it. I had no idea that Alcoholics Anonymous was a book. I thought AA was just a place where you go and you sit around a room. It's what I've seen on movies.
Right.
I was kind of at a loss, because I just didn't. So I kind of started flipping through it and didn't read much. But in my first meeting, the person doing the meeting started going through Bill's story, and I was thinking, who is Bill? Why is it important to know this guy's story? Because I was literally scared and nervous and confused, I guess. I don't know. It's not a blur because I do remember most of it, but yeah. So anyway, I just sat in that meeting and listened to all of Bill's escapades and all this stuff, and then listened to the heartbreak in his story and the pain. And it got to the part in the story where he talks about, the feeling of self-pity, and that quicksand was stretched all around him. And then at the end of that paragraph, it said, alcohol was my master. And man, I don't know what it was about that paragraph in his story, but it really just hit me like right in the heart. So I sat there for a minute, and I actually wrote in my book that day, I can't live with it and I can't live without it. I wanted to stop drinking, but I was scared to death to stop drinking because it's all I knew. Mm-hmm. Everything in my life revolved around wine. Everything. I would get done what I needed to get done so that I would be allowed to drink without getting in trouble. And I know, and I knew it when I did walk through those doors, I was exhausted, and I had so much self-pity, but so much self-hatred, because I was like, when I think about my kids, I would take a bullet for my husband. I would take a bullet for my mother, but I couldn't stop drinking. I didn't understand it. I was just baffled at a person who can do all the things that I've done in my life, that this just licked me and it kicked my butt, And so the chair of that meeting, she said, y'all, you're the only one who can diagnose yourself as an alcoholic. So let's, turn to page 44. And I read those two stipulations. When you start drinking, you can't control it, or when you can't go without it, you're probably alcoholic. And I really had to sit in that chair and be honest with myself, because I've been in denial for so long, and I will say that no matter how angry my kids or my husband or my mother got at me because of my behavior, they never once yelled to my face, "You are just a alcoholic." I had to come up with that one on my own. And the book doesn't say you are an alcoholic. The book says you are probably alcoholic. But I knew when I sat back and I thought about all the stuff that I put my family through and my husband, I had to answer yes to both of those questions. And I wrote it in the book on that page yes, I'm an alcoholic. And to be honest, it was actually a relief because there was an answer. I was sick. I wasn't a bad person. I knew deep down I wasn't a bad person because I would do anything for anybody. I've volunteered since I got married. I put people first and I want to help people, but I couldn't stop. And I knew in that 2:30 meeting, I was on board 100% because I remember watching the speaker walk into that meeting and she was hugging now I know the community assistant and hugging the community coordinator who sits in the back of the community room. And they were smiling and they were laughing. And then she got up there and said, my name is so-and-so. I'm an alcoholic. And her sober date, I think she was 9 months sober. I was baffled because I was like, wait a minute. This woman has not had a drink in 9 months. And she was happy about it. Because, as a kid with the family, when so-and-so was on the wagon, they weren't very nice. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I just, and I joked with my friends too, whenever I told them, my girlfriends that I'm still friends with, I've known since I was 10 years old. I told them, I texted them when I was going to come to Maggie's and I said, I've hit a point where I need to figure it out. I need to go somewhere and figure out what's going on with me. And I told one of my girlfriends, I said, I'm scared to stop drinking because I'm afraid it won't be funny anymore.
Yeah.
And she made a comment to me. She said, I've known you since we were 10 and you were funny before you started drinking. I just didn't know. I didn't know a life without it. It's everywhere. It's at weddings. It's at girls' night out. It's at game nights. It's at funerals. It's everywhere. And it's socially accepted everywhere. And I was right on board, of course. And my old tagline was, well, I just drink too much sometimes. You know what I mean? It's my thing is what I used to say. And I can't say that I don't have some funny memories because I do, but it's all fun and games until it's not.
Yeah.
Until I cross that line because our disease is progressive. And to get the education that I got at Maggie's just opened my eyes.
Yeah.
To there is a lot of us out there. And I was really good at putting on a show. And I hid it. And literally hid it from people they had no idea. That it was a struggle that actually went on, not just at parties. It was at home and I isolated. I had all the characteristics, but the Magdalen House showed me that there's hope and there is especially the community, because nobody on this earth can understand me as a recovering alcoholic like another alcoholic. And it's community. The steps say we, because we as humans are not supposed to be alone ever. We're order, we're tribes, and I have recovered this long with community. I don't sit at home by myself because that's what got me into trouble, and the Magdalen House is so important. I was fortunate enough that the other places, we have insurance, we have health insurance. So I could have went somewhere that took my insurance. I couldn't believe it was free. I was like, what's funny about
what's
this?
the catch?
What's the
nothing
catch?
in life is free.
Absolutely. And it's still to this day, the people that I tell that I went away to treatment and that I didn't have to pay a penny, they are flabbergasted. Absolutely flabbergasted. And they're like, I had no idea that there was a place like this. And I'm like, yeah, it saved my life along with my sponsor and my higher power and my family, and 2, family support. my husband, whenever I was in the house, he was on trips for both family nights. So he wasn't able to come up on the Wednesday evening. And I didn't even know, I guess I had just forgotten. He talked to the girls who did my intake about the Zoom. Mm-hmm. They did a Zoom like the next day at that time. And he actually logged in from where he was. I don't even know where he was in the world, but he did a Zoom call and sat in on the family support meeting. And he learned about alcoholism because, you know, everybody has a stereotype of what they think an alcoholic is. 9 times out of 10, it's not what you think it is, you know, because it's education. It is absolute education. And that, I will say, in my recovery, if my husband hadn't been afforded that education on alcoholism, it made a huge difference in my recovery because he was 100% involved. He was 100% supportive of whatever you have to do, Magyn, in order for you to be free of this. You know, I'm not cured. I'm never cured, right? But he said, whatever you have to do in order to ensure your recovery, I'm absolutely on board because he read the big book too. You know, and he was like, wow, I had no idea that that's what it was. And he said, and now and of course for him too, looking back on my drinking. Mm-hmm. Okay. That answers a lot of questions. Yeah. Is it, you know, why can't you just have 2 glasses of wine at dinner and go home and sit and watch a movie and we can go to sleep? And, you know, instead it just would just snowball.
Yeah.
You know, the Magdalen House, it's a hidden gem, but it shouldn't be hidden.
Right.
Because I think everybody, you know, and of course, you know, whenever you go through the steps and you have your spiritual awakening, you know, you want to stand on top of a mountain and say, I have the answer. Follow me. You know, let's go. You know, because like I said, it was a relief that there was an answer to my madness.
Yeah.
And it was absolute madness.
Yeah. And
I can never, I come back here. I will come back here until I'm told not to come back here because what was given to me was free and I have to give it away to keep it. You know, and this place literally, it's a miracle worker. I'm just grateful. And I'm grateful that my mother was in Al-Anon. I'm grateful that you know, that program exists, that my mother, you know, had a sponsor who gave her the tools in order to help me. It's just a big circle.
Yeah.
You know, and and today my sobriety date is March 10th of 2023. And so I guess I'm 3 years and 4 months now. And I have never been happier. The tools, that book is literally a toolkit. And of course, we're told this in all the meetings, but it's a design of living. It was a lifestyle change. And for me, I was scared to change because I still wanted to be Magyn.
Right.
Without the booze. But Magyn didn't know how to be Magyn without the booze until I came here.
Yeah.
And it's invaluable. It's literally invaluable. And I love sharing meetings. I love overnighting because I want women and now men to know they're not alone. Because that's what I felt. I literally felt like I was the only person on this earth with this problem. And then I come here and realize, you know what, Magyn, you're not alone. And if anybody can understand the way my brain works, it's another alcoholic. So the Magdalen House, it's just a ray of sunshine.
Yeah.
In my life and in my family's life.
Magyn, thank you so much for sharing. I mean, this has been such a great, what I love about your story is it's not exclusive. Like I can think when you're telling your story, I can see so much of like myself and my experience and what happened, just like the thousands of women that have come through this place and the men that are coming through. You touched on so many great points, but I think one of the first things I want to circle back on is that you mentioned you had insurance and that you could go to these fancy places. But what made you choose the Magdalen House was that it was women only, right? So that it was a safe place. And that is one of our 6 points of difference, is that it is gender specific facilities. So there's not really a lot of intermixing. And then our other biggest point of difference was that peer implementation, having another alcoholic sitting in front of you, going through this big book. And like you, I had been to 12-step meetings, but I never, I wasn't serious about it. I'd been given the book, but I'd never read it. And so we do use the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous as our curriculum. We do study it. And I can remember going through it just like you and finding and highlighting all the things that I started relating to.
Absolutely.
So besides Bill's story, you said there was the moment where quicksand was all around me, alcohol was my master, and then the qualifying questions on 44. Was there something in the book or that somebody said during a meeting that you latched onto after that? Like anything about the solution? Like, okay, now you have your problem, but tell me about, the solution and what that looked like for you.
Well, yeah, definitely. In meetings, I'm a visual learner, so I have to see it. I can read and I can listen to somebody all day long, but I think for me to see the cycle of doom written out on the blackboard, in the room, in the community room. And that was their life. And that was definitely my life. But then whenever the meeting chair that day, whenever she looked at me and said, "So what do you think?" Whenever I saw the 2 questions, and then I answered yes to both, she said, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, "Well, I think I'm an alcoholic." And she kind of giggled and said, "Well, yeah, I'm screwed, huh?" And I laughed and I was like, "Yeah, what am I going to do now?" And she says, "Magyn, there's a solution. And the solution is right up there on the wall. It's those 12 steps." And obviously in the house we do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, because those are the most important steps. But it all circles back to step 1. Because you have to, and I have to, every day know when I wake up in the morning that I'm an alcoholic. And the work that I do all day, that I was trained by the Magdalen House while I was in the house for the 12 days, or 14 days, excuse me. And then the 12 steps that I worked with my sponsor, and then through Next Step, I know that everything that I do on a daily basis is in defense of that first drink. And I feel like I to circle back to my intake, one of the girls, actually both of the girls that did my intake went through Maggie's. And I remember just thinking, what? Because I had it in my head. You see 28 Days with Sandra Bullock.
Oh, that's
right?
my favorite.
And I love it, right? It's one of my favorite movies ever. But it wasn't doctors and it wasn't counselors. It was actual recovering alcoholics who worked here, who did the intake, who walked a mile in the shoes I was about to start walking in, that I could relate to. That was the game changer for me. And all of those women that would come in and do the meetings, even from the groups in Dallas that come in to do the meetings, that to me, that meant so much, because they had walked where I had walked. And I do want to say something else too, that in recovery. So I told you my dad died in 2002. And he is actually buried in the National Cemetery here off Loop 12. And so he was buried there. And like I said, he died of an alcohol-related accident. And I never went to his graveside for 22 years. Because here in the back of my head, like I said, I started to realize, and I knew that my drinking was different. But my dad, the headstone on my dad's graveside was going to be my future if I didn't change. And I actually went back to his graveside when I was 6 months sober. And I sat there and I talked to him. And I used to make the excuse, well, he's not there. Why do I need to go? I don't need to go there, But I also didn't live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area too. So that was a really good reason to not. But I knew. But I went 6 months sober, and I talked to him and I said, Dad, I figured out the problem and I was given the solution so that my kids don't have to go through, because I know he would never have wanted to die like that.
Yeah.
Right. But that is the gift of this place. And I know without a doubt, he's right there beside me. He's always with me. Right. But I had to get sober, but I had to be honest with myself about my situation. And Maggie's what is it, 52 or 54 meetings that we attend in those 2 weeks. You know, every meeting was solution based. And it's an action program. You know, and like step two, you know, I had no problem with a higher power because I'd always been a prayer, but I'd always just prayed, dear Lord, take this away from me without putting in some work for it. Right.
Right.
And so for those 12 steps, all of it is solution based, but it's also action based. You're not just going to get it. Yeah. You get the education for free, but you got to put some work into it in order to get the freedom. Right. And that's one of my favorite things about this place. And I still love it that everybody comes back so that these girls in the house can see that it's possible.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think that was the biggest game changer for me, was seeing people come back. You know, I think a lot of people out there think that, you know, it's just about the 2 weeks, but it's about so much more than that. You know, it's comprehensive recovery. It's a continuum of care, which looks like, you know, you have the 14 days in first step, and then you go to next step, where you get another, you know, education on how to apply these steps to the real world and go more in depth and get that education to really come back and help people. And then, of course, community. I mean, I think that is the biggest part.
Is absolutely the biggest part.
What does being a part of this community mean to you?
Oh, gosh, it's just fun. It's fun. There's no judgment. It's all love. No matter how many times we come back, and no matter how many times people come back to the house and our clients, there is absolutely no judgment, and it's love. It's all love because we've all been through it. And there's nothing that I could say out loud about stuff that I did that anyone is going to balk at or, oh my goodness, you know, it's like, oh, I've done worse. You know what I mean? I mean, it's the steps say we for a reason. You know, I mean, I haven't been recovered this long by myself, and I couldn't do it by myself. I have to come back here to remember where it started, where my recovery started, and never forget. When I was in the house, I started getting up early. And so I would write, you know, what I remember of what it was like for me. And I still go back and read those, you know, because I can't forget. Right. But I also have learned to forgive myself for that. And if there's ever anything going on in my life, I know that there are a million people, and I'm obviously saying that in a large sense, but there are plenty of people I can pick up the phone and call to pull me back from the ledge, or to just say, look, you're not alone. Let's chat, or let's meet up, or get to Dallas, come and see us, or whatever. But I can't, my life would not be the same if I hadn't kept coming back.
Yeah. You know, and the beautiful part, yes, I love everything you said about the community. And the best part is that every single part of the Magdalen House, it's free. Yeah. You get to, you know, first step, next step, community. What does it mean to you that you got all of this, and not just your recovery, but this ripple effect that it created through your family as well? What does it mean to you that you got all of this for free?
It means the world. It means my life. And it means not just my life, but a happy life. And that if any of my family who have been benefactors of family support, if they ever get into the situation that I was in, I know where they know where they can go. I want it to be here for my children, for my grandchildren, if there's ever a need. And we all try to give back. I mean, it is free. I mean, it's just astounding to me. And I don't know the thousands of women and men that have come. I mean, it's almost been around 40 years. 40 years. I was 10. You know what I mean? And it was the 4 women that were like, we need a place for women to be safe and get sober. And for that that has continued this long. And the outpouring of support to the staff, just the mission is so important. The mission is so important because there's so many of us out there. And, the stats aren't great on recovery, but if we plant the seed, eventually it'll grow. It's just invaluable.
Yeah.
And I'm so appreciative, and my family is so appreciative, to be, when I was a month sober and people didn't even know I went to treatment, and they would say, "You look different."
Yeah.
It lifted a weight, but it gave me a purpose too. Once, I was so busy raising kids, so busy getting them, so they could fly, get their little wings, and so they could fly and become adults. After they left, I didn't know what my purpose was, because I was definitely put on this earth to be a wife and mother. But now that they're living their lives, my purpose is to help alcoholics. And this is a life-saving mission. It is life or death. And I would much rather spend my time here and wherever I'm needed to try to help the next person with the education that I was given at the Magdalen House. I mean, I don't know if I answered that correctly, but yeah, it's amazing. And anybody that I tell about this place, they're just like, "Are you really?" I'm like, yeah, for real. I mean, it's a beautiful place, not just a beautiful house, period, but just beautiful in the sense of what it can do and what it does do.
Do you have anything else that you want to add about anything, what your life looks like today, recovery, the Magdalen House? I mean, anything that you want people listening to this to know?
I think this program in the Magdalen House, the education that I've received, I have to say that I'm probably the most content I've ever been in my life. I'm comfortable in my own skin. I'm comfortable being alone. Never liked being alone. I mean, that's what kind of got me in a lot of trouble, right? But the big book, and the way the Magdalen House teaches it in First Step and in Next Step, it's tools for success. You just do the work. Nothing's free, right? The Magdalen House is free, but recovery is work. And it's not hard work. It's fun work. I mean, I can't complain, because it's definitely better than where I was 3 years and 4 months ago.
Right.
5 months ago, whatever. And that was not, I wasn't happy. I didn't like myself. But then when I learned that I have a disease and that recovery is possible, I think a solution is the most important thing. And we offer the solution to that. And it's all love, and it's no judgment. A lot of hard love, right? But that never hurt anybody.
Right.
It's a matter of being honest. Life now is great. I mean, just hit 31 years married and have a grandson, and he's just beautiful. And all 3 of my children are good humans. And I'm so blessed, and they're happy that mom is sober and they can call me at 5 p.m. or 7 p.m. or 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. and I'm going to answer the phone. And I'm there. I'm present. That's a big one, because for so many years, I mean, I was present to an extent.
Right. Up till 5 o'clock.
Absolutely. Or until the game was over.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But yeah, I'm very blessed. I'm very grateful. And I'm so thankful, that my family didn't give up on me. They didn't like me for a long time. And and I get it. I didn't like me either. So I can relate. But the Magdalen House gave me the gift of life, the gift of, here's your solution. Now go out and do it. Yeah. And I'm so grateful.
Yeah. We're grateful that you have stayed so close to Maggie's the last 3 years.
Yeah. Unless you kick me out.
Nope, that's not going to happen. If you are interested in getting to know Magyn a little bit more, or if you just want to connect with her, if you're looking for a sponsor, she is available for sponsorship. She does chair the 2:30 meetings at our Women's House on Gaston every other Monday. And like I said earlier, she is also co-chair of Maggie's Women's Group. We do have a private Facebook page, Maggie's Women's Group, where you can get connected there as well. So Magyn, thank you again for taking the time to do this. This has been wonderful. I never knew your story, so I feel like I learned a lot about you today. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Recovered, Interviews with Alcoholics. If this episode has offered hope, clarity, or comfort to you, please consider making a donation to the Magdalen House. By paying it forward, you help make sure the next alcoholic gets the same chance, completely free. You can give anytime at magdalenhouse.org. We release new episodes every first and third Wednesday, so be sure to tune in. Want to learn more or stay connected? Visit magdalenhouse.org or find us on social by searching The Magdalen House. The Magdalen House is a privately funded 501c3 nonprofit in Dallas, Texas, and every program we offer is possible because people like you choose to give. Thank you for helping us change and save lives.